Hello, sports fans.
Oh, my God.
Sorry. All right, you noises. It's James Haskell, and welcome to another episode of The Good, The Bad and The Rugby in partnership with City Index, the leading provider of spread betting, CFD and FX trading. Hask here, no Payne this week, so it's down to me and Tinds to keep things on track. Firstly, how dare you come at me, right? And before we intro our guest...
I know that you expect standards, and you drive standards yourself, and I just felt that was a little bit lazy.
I
know you take criticism. I know you've
do.
got very, very broad shoulders. Ironically, you've chose to show them all today because it's 52 degrees outside. So if you can hear the air conditioning, we make no apologies.
Okay, I will say it was an oversight for me not to bring my merchandise. We do have a fantastic range of merchandise, by the way. If you follow us on tour and you're good, faithful, loyal fans, you will know we have an incredible range which is coming live very soon. But this is the best weather. I have been waiting for this day. A heat wave. I mean, you're lucky I'm not wearing fucking budgie smugglers or a thong. I've wanted to wear this vest the entire time. Our guest today, because he's a scathing, negative bastard, but I don't want to introduce him quite yet. He looked at me and went, wearing a vest, are you? But it's never a question. It's a statement. It's like, you're like, well, I was, but now you've made me question
It's like
it.
interviewing Ron Burgundy.
Yeah.
Stay classy, San Diego.
How are you, Tins?
I'm very well, actually. I had a lovely weekend. I mean, everyone moans about this weather.
Oh, no.
It's just great. Paddling pools out, kids going mad. Loved it.
I mean, actually, we had a conversation with our MD. I won't mention his name in case he wants to distance himself from my next comments. We had a conversation about, is everyone coming into work today? I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. Why? Is it raining fire? No, it's just a little bit hot. So everyone get in the mix. And we've had a delightful day. We've actually had a couple of beers, I think it's fair to say, on a work day.
Shandies, actually.
Shandies, tops, yeah.
But yeah, you always get worried because when Hask is in charge of HR now, so it's a dangerous place for our business.
Alex once told me that at his boarding school, it probably Eton, could be any one of them, that they set up Childline for the very first time. And it turned out they hadn't really connected to Childline, that basically it was connected to the headmaster's office. So imagine some kids turned up. Hello, Perkins, is that you? It's the headmaster. Get the fuck back to your desk. That was very similar to GBR's.
Character building. Right?
HR policy.
Character building.
I'd like to make a complaint. James Haskell, it was very rude about my lid. Is that you? Listen, you shut the fuck up, right? Wear a sun hat, put some sun cream on, and you're turning up to work. You're not having a day off. I am shocked that people are having a day off. It's 38 degrees, potentially maybe 40, right? And it's not like other countries in the world don't have to deal with this. Why is it even a thing?
Because we're not prepared. This country is not prepared.
What are we prepared for?
Basically, mediocre. Middle of the road. That is what we're prepared for. So mediocre weather. If there's too much rain, we're not prepared for it. Not enough rain, we're dry, we're
snowy,
droughting.
Too many leaves, trains are falling off tracks. Right. Okay, let's just look at our British transport system, right? Rails get too hot, trains come off. Too cold, trains come off. Leaves on the track come off. I don't understand. What weather do trains operate in? It's fucking mental. Anyway, look. So there's now Alex, but unfortunately there's plenty to talk about. And replaced Alex, one of the most likeable men in rugby. I really shouldn't talk about myself like that. A former teammate of mine at Saints and England, Tom Wood. You're back with us, and you're looking fucking handsome, Chief.
That's some solid
likeable. I've never had that before.
Some solid work going into that beard, isn't it?
A little bit of.
I mean, we are quite lazy, but that has been groomed.
That's magnificent, isn't it?
And a bit of colouring in that, or just no grey kicking in yet?
No grey. Bit of ginger.
But it's coiffured. For those listening as audio, I mean, I can't believe you're only listening as audio because we're a visual medium as well. As you know, if you were big fans, you know that. But
I ain't got time for visual, mate.
Operating
machinery, you can't be visual.
I'm only here for the visual aspect with the tight vest and an unbelievable tan. I look a little bit albino, but that's fine. It's 2022.
I don't know about you, but the lid is. I mean, I think with the sun, it's going a little bit blonder, which makes it look a little bit leaner on top, doesn't it?
About time we sewed a deso in it.
You reckon? You reckon it's time?
Dills is the.
He's basically basing his research off
Dylan's the canary in the coal mine, innit? Yeah. See how that goes. But if that's a success, then you'll be next.
But you know, when I spoke to Dylan, so Dylan Hartley, obviously a friend of the show, we had a chat with him, and Dill's like, "Listen, I've taken the plunge. I'm getting my lid done." I was like, "Brilliant, Dills. You know, how's it going to go?" He goes, "Yeah, real professional." And then he got it done over a Costco in Essex. And I was like, "Listen, I don't want to judge, but alarm bells are ringing." Do you know what I mean? Done over a Costco in Essex. He went, yeah, they used to be on Harley Street. I went, what do you mean they used to be? Well, prices.
Until the medical regulation officers whip them off there.
That's what I mean. Getting some reasonably priced groceries and then get your barnet done.
Buying tea bags.
But I've talked about your beard before, actually, because we're going to come on to this later on the show, but I'd say it's fair to say you're quite obsessive about things, isn't it? It's like if you're going to get into beard, no, your beard, you were dyeing it, you were lining it up, you went on a course, you're now a qualified beard operator, are you?
Yeah. I mean, it's in the background now, but for a while, I was pretty intense with the beard, I suppose. I got sent all load of freebies, like beard oils, combs, brushes, like little trim up numbers. Yeah, it was a professional
I was
job
working
for a
the
while.
trees on Parsons Green. He was walking around just eyeing them all up, like what he could chop down.
We've actually... Well, obviously, we're going to talk to Tom about his kind of retirement, but we spent a bit of time together recently. It's good. It's like the old days.
Yeah, since I retired, I've got you as my PA, setting me up, a few gigs here and there. Fun bus with Big Jace, shooting day.
He's only seeing that as commish. It's not friendship.
Oh, of course, yeah.
No, I didn't get commish, though. I didn't ask for it. I mean, the problem is now at some point I'm going to tell him.
It's going to be a bit awkward when the invoice comes in.
You just haven't got the invoice.
I don't operate like that. I'll be 3 a.m. while we knock on the door, frantically crying, going, get the wood chipper out. I've got a body to get rid of. And there's Chloe's legs sticking out of the carpet. Shh. Yeah, payback. That'll be what it is. Yeah, we hide the gun. That's what it is. Look, we've got loads to get to in this episode. We're going to talk in a lot more detail about Tom's career and what's in store for him post-rugby. We'll also debrief the summer tours and the best stories of the domestic season. But before we get into it, I think we'd all want to extend our thoughts to Ryan Jones and his family following his early onset dementia diagnosis. He's a big friend of the show, and as former international players who have all, let's face it, put ourselves in the same situation as he did every week, when you hear the news, it really strikes very close to home. And Tinds, obviously, that's utterly shocking. We had him on our kind of live show we did in central London not long ago.
Yeah, awful. I played football with him 2 weeks ago. He obviously has kept it back for personal reasons, maybe to figure things out. Yeah, look, you don't want to hear any of your old sparring partners or anyone you've played with going through the journey that we've had a lot of experience with Steve Thompson in terms of what he's going through, and it's going to be a tough ride for him, but hopefully the earlier you can get there, you get on something that can hopefully help for now. You never know where this journey ends, but obviously he's such a great lad. He's infectious, he's enthusiastic. I mean, he started doing Ironmans, so he literally looked like a streak of piss. So it wasn't dementia, we thought. Yeah,
I saw him at dinner, and he turned up.
It was
like, this is Ryan
92
Jones.
kilos.
I thought I was going to set up like a Just Giving page, and I was like, "Are you right?" He was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'm doing Ironman," and I was like, "Yeah, I still don't think there's anything right with you. That's horrific."
Yeah.
Doing terrible.
No one 6'5" and used to be weighing 15 plus kegs should be doing an Ironman and start rolling in at 92 kegs or whatever he was. But no, he's a great human being, and it's such a shame. But I think there's going to be more that come out. We have shared views on it in terms of what the game is, and it's the downside to contact sport in some ways, especially for forwards. But with all the tackling we've got, hopefully things are going to change with the contact change in training and everything else. I think that's where most of the probably damage is done, rather than on a game day. But it just highlights the need to make sure we're doing everything right.
Are you worried, Woody? You've just freshly retired. Is this something on your radar?
It definitely is worrying when you see ex-players coming out having problems, having medical issues, and announcing things like Ryan. And I think back to Ryan's sort of impact he made on 2005 Lions and what a player he was. To hear him going through that at such an early age, it is worrying. I mean, I don't feel like I've got any real symptoms of that at the moment. But when you're in it, you probably don't know, I suppose. My memory's not brilliant, but I don't know if that's just me or whether that's dementia. And I've got mixed feelings on the whole thing in general because, I did sign up willingly and I do enjoy the game and I enjoy all the rougher, more niggly elements of it. So, sometimes we talk about making the game safe, and I don't want to sterilise all the contact and self-policing and physicality out of the game with a view to making it accessible to absolutely everybody and super safe and almost boring. I like those sides of it. So, but there's got to be a balance with head collisions and medical care and training, as you've said, and how we police it. In terms of, you get a head injury, you do the HIAs, you're withdrawn, you're assessed properly, and you only return to play when you're good and ready. So yeah, there's loads of elements to it, but a big part of me loved that side of rugby, so I'd hate to see it
And this is the difficult thing, is I think this is going back quite a few years. You know, when Jones started, when I started, you know, we couldn't
tackle Webb Ellis, didn't you?
we couldn't get the physio side of it right. So, you know, people say, people weren't paying attention to that. You weren't even thinking about that. The training wasn't even professional at that time. And I think moving forward and how much it's changed in the 26 years or whatever we've been professional is chalk and cheese from where we were. Could we have done more? Of course we can. We can always do more. You can always look back and say that we could do more. I think I sit on the same boat as you. I enjoyed that physical element. But I think one thing that we've always talked about is how much you do during the week. There's too much in the week. Yeah. Allow people, you know, unfortunately with rugby players, there's always that gladiatorial mindset that you are going out to battle and you know it's going to be that physicality, but it doesn't need to be that Monday to Wednesday, let's say, you know, the 3 extra days. So I think we found we've said this numerous times, I think we found the balance now in the game where everything's pretty much where you want it to be. You start taking more away, it becomes a bit of a farce. People are already saying it's a bit of a farce in terms of cards and everything else, and you're asked to make split-second decisions 35 times a day. If you get one wrong, it's a red card. I mean, you know, I think we found a happy balance. If there's force into it, there's arguments on the weekend that, you know, the All Blacks get sent off last week. Then there's another one this week that was Porter, and he only gets a yellow card because he wasn't the dominant tackler going forward, whereas the All Black was a dominant. You know, I
really struggle with that language, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that is so hard to police, and you know, whether you're dominant or not is irrelevant, really. You know, so a small bloke can jump up and chin a big bloke, but as long as he doesn't finish him and it's not dominant, then it's all good.
Yeah.
But if you turn it around and a big guy puts one on a smaller guy and ends him, then suddenly it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
really.
it's a difficult one. And Wayne Barnes is you know, I think he reffed the game amazingly on the weekend, but it's just one of those. It's perceptions. Yeah, are we ever going to get it right? No, there's always going to be controversy around it, but you know, you got to take player safety in. We go back to that discussing an orange card where it sort of takes it away. You get 20 minutes down to 14. Someone else can then come on, so you're back to 15. Sort of takes that mitigating factor away. Yeah. You know, you can be very much more blasé in that bang head contact. It doesn't matter you don't have to mitigate it down. Orange card, he's off for the game. 20 minutes without, someone can then come back on.
And then it can be reviewed as to whether it's a ban or anything like that, but it might just be 20 minutes sufficient or whatever.
But again,
I was going to say though, there's a couple of other factors. One is not just the amount of contact, but it's the duration of the season. Like, boys are basically playing an 11-month season at the minute. You think about the internationals only just finishing now. Yeah. They get next to no pre-season to rebuild. They've got their mandatory time off, which is great, but that robs you of any pre-season strength and fitness training. So you go into the following season and, you know, you're straight back into it in August. Warm-up games start in August. So, you know, it's there's not much downtime or break or chance to get away and fully recuperate. So, yeah, that's tough. And the other thing I was going to say, and I'm not levelling this criticism at Ryan Jones, I don't know Ryan well enough to know anything about this, but there's a lot of stuff happens outside of rugby as well that could be factors into terms of early onset dementia and things like that. If you're drinking a lot, if you're downtown fighting and things like that, then in your early days, that, you know, you could be a teenager downtown fighting. You know, there's all sorts of things that could potentially be true that are outside of rugby that you can't then point a gun at rugby as in terms of being responsible for everything.
So you're sort of saying in terms of the general factors, if you would look at general numbers of men in the population who got sort of early onset dementia, we've obviously had a few in rugby, but statistically you're saying that ultimately these people are going to have it anyway, potentially.
Yeah, I don't actually know any of the statistics, so I'm not leveling it. I'm not making any strong claims. I'm just saying there are some factors outside of rugby that, you know, need consideration. And because a high profile rugby player has it, unfortunately, doesn't mean that it's symptomatic of the game or the game is the underlying problem necessarily. It may be in this case, it may not be. And I don't know Ryan well enough to say anything, but
it is an interesting point though. No one's actually brought that up. If you think about it statistically, so, you know, we always talk about sexuality in rugby or stuff. There's statistically, I think, was it one gay player out, and then if you look at it population-wise, it's supposed to be completely different. And they talk about people with cancers. It's 1 in 2 now. Yeah. And then if you look at it, how many players are to go on and have that? Is it rugby? Because you could statistically look at it and go, is rugby the cause? We're playing devil's advocate here, and I don't want to for any minute.
None of us are
diminish-
scientists, and none of us have done any neuroscience on the issues.
I've played a few mock doctors and nurses. That was a completely different situation.
But there's loads of factors like sleep quality
Yeah.
and nutrition, and how well you rehab and look after yourself and take care of yourself outside of the game. And like if you're drinking and taking any other substances and fighting downtown, and you've got a lifestyle.
You keep mentioning fighting downtown.
Yeah,
You've done a bit of fighting
was
downtown back in the day.
Possibly in your
Well,
past.
if it turns out that you were like a bouncer for a few years in your early days before you were a professional,
Were
then
you a bouncer early days?
unofficially.
Did you just go around beating people up? Is this
go around getting my head kicked in town.
Go
Yeah,
back to school.
Aren't you like a black belt in karate or something?
Jiu-jitsu, but
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that look
Even
that you just gave you could be finding out.
as a teenager, I've not done it for a long time, and my shoulders don't work anymore.
No.
So yeah, it's
So as long as you
limited.
don't get put in a Kimura, you're fine. But someone's getting put into a pretzel shape at the end of the day.
Sleep.
But I mean, look, I'd asked Tinds about what it was like when he played, but to be honest with you, when he played, they were watching it through a magic lantern, black and white. So for someone who's literally just left the field and hung his boots up not long ago, when you hear about someone like Ryan Jones, would it make you think twice, or would you do what most players do, go, it's not affecting me, and just dismiss it and carry on?
No, I wouldn't change anything about my career, what I did, or my decision making. It was I was all in from the start, and I loved it. And there's always risks. I mean, we're all guilty of thinking it won't happen to us, probably. And then the small percentage that end up having some sort of career ending or life changing injury. I had a good friend, Rob Horn. Fairly topical after England playing Australia at the weekend, who was paralysed in his left arm. You hear the dementia claims afterwards. Luckily, they're few and far between. You just assume you're not going to be one of them. You do kind of feel a bit invincible as a rugby player, and it's incredibly sad when it strikes close to home like that. But no, it wouldn't change any of my decision making. There's a lot of upside to being a rugby player, and a lot of pros that outweigh the cons for me, and I loved it. And I would have done something gladiatorial, whether it was rugby or I had to be doing something that was active and along those lines. So rugby was the best vehicle for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be the same, but I think it's also a generational thing. I think maybe the new generation that are coming in, things have to change. We talked about training. We've talked about the due care that happens now in terms of going off the field. I still think there's a bit more around that can be done. Whether you're allowed to be back on, even if you pass an HI, do we need that? Coaches are learning that it's not about the contact you do in the week. It's technique that should be. What was that phrase we quite liked? 100% concentration, 10% effort, or something.
No, it was
a bit more than that, wasn't it?
75% kind of contact. Do you know what I mean? Or 75. It was like 100% position, 75% effort. You know what I mean?
And so that contact is about aggression on the weekend. It's during the week it should be. It's more technique, and as long as coaches are taking that board on all levels, and that starts with young kids and not just mindlessly running them into pads and everything, and actually thinking about body positions and everything else, then that's education. That's moving forward.
I mean,
just to make a point on concussion, so I know we focus massively on like head-to-head contact or shoulder-to-head contact. I felt like mildly concussed in training, having not been even touched in the head. We had a drill well back with myself and Courtney Lawes stood opposite each other, sort of 10 metres apart. One of us holds the ball, and we just ran into each other with a view to stinging the ball. So you imagine you're running with the ball sort of at chest height, and it's like target the ball, put your shoulder through somebody, and like sting them. Stop them dead. Courtney's a big man, and I can handle myself. And we're running into each other. We're representing our country. We're building up to a game, and we do 10 or 15 of these reps. And I remember walking away. Like I hadn't hit the floor. No one had hit me in the head. But I remember walking away thinking, Jesus, like I feel somewhat foggy, dizzy, concussed, whatever terminology you want to put to it. And it's like that repeated just whiplash effect of running into somebody, taking a shot, having your head rattle backwards like that, and then delivering one, and then receiving one, and then delivering one and receiving one. And we must have done 10 to 15 each on the bounce. And I remember walking the rest of the session thinking, like...
That's the thing, is you two, obviously world-class international back rows, most tackles you make it... it was a lot. It was quite hard to get.
It was. I saw you struggle.
It's in the notes.
It's really not an auto cue.
Fuck you, wrote this, producer. Delete that.
Great producer.
Your toughest defensive game, 25 to 30 tackles max in a game. Sometimes you can do that in 20. You used to be able to do that in 25 minutes of contact training because you do small-sided games where everyone's just picking going into you.
Yeah.
And that's the side that has to change.
I think because you'd often perceive a bag drill as being less impact and less in relation to concussion. but you hit it harder. There's no holds barred. You don't time it. You don't technically go down and get like legs and stuff like that and make a good technical tackle. You go in and make as much impact into the bag as you can. The guy holding the bag goes boom and his head rocks back. And it's the guy holding the bag getting concussed.
Or you get a bag nose who holds it right down his leg, so he's like hitting a breeze block.
So someone train like
Lewis Schmoo
train like Tarzan.
A Schmoo or a Schmon Schmells.
Train like Tarzan, play like Joe.
Well, they played right, but anyone from Leicester basically would always escalate.
Knee behind the bag.
Knee behind the bag. Elbow behind the bag. As you run in, you get knocked out, they tear your ear off. Nausea. I remember actually when we went to Denver, I remember doing training at Denver Broncos, and I'm talking to one of the linemen, this young guy was there, and it was just before or just after the concussion situation had happened in the NFL, and concussion wasn't on the radar for rugby because it was sort of 2015. Because remember, no one ever used to get concussed. It's like in 2014, 2015, suddenly concussion happened.
Yeah.
God knows what happened before that. And I remember talking to the guy, and he said wearing a helmet as a linesman, he was getting 25 to 30 mini concussions, essentially cerebral events per session because he was pushing, banging helmets, forcing it. And you just take that for granted. And that's not even within a game. And you're sort of getting that from bag drills, getting up, mauling, running in, hitting people, colliding. So obviously I think something's got to do. I mean, do you think rugby's in a bit of a crisis of kind of PR at the moment? Because this is another nail in rugby's coffin slightly.
I think, unfortunately, it is. I think it's a double-edged one, though, with women's rugby going so well at the moment. You're getting some mums who don't want them to play, but then some mums who are playing who are then, they want their kids to sort of get into the game because rugby is that infectious family sort of feeling that brings people in and looks after you as a community. So there is that side of it. But I think, obviously this is sort of a grey cloud hanging over. In some ways, I think we've got to a point where we've probably taken it as far as what we can do in a game, I believe. I mean, you could sort of completely sterilise it, but as you said, why do people watch it? Because they want that physicality side. It's like, why does anyone want to watch a boxing match or a UFC fight? They want to see that physicality. Now, we're getting close to the point where you're going to have to try and ask people to make decisions about what they can do in a split second. And you can't make that because then they'll make the wrong decision. It probably could end even worse. So rugby is about competition in every area of the game. And most of the time that's a physical competition, whether it's jumping for a ball in the air, whether it's how you clear out, moving, mauling, whatever. It's tackling. It is the physicality side, and people are drawn to those who win that physicality, and we have to admit that. But then what we have to do is make sure everything else, the week leading up to games for professionals, training in grassroots clubs in terms of how they manage it, and that needs education through their coaches and education through their players because they're still of the late 90s where they'll probably get C stars, they'll carry on. No, I'm fine. That warrior type mentality, which I think as professionals now we've lost because we understand it more. Whether that's fed down into grassroots rugby, I don't know. So I think the game as a whole is as safe as it be. Red cards are becoming the norm. Again, let's talk about changing that and making it better for the game that it doesn't ruin a game. But no, I think we're getting there. Look, unfortunately, we're going to have sad stories for a while to come because there's a lot of people who played through from my era to sort of Jones's era who, things weren't quite as switched on as what they are now. But that was the game back then. It was so amateur in terms of how the day-to-day ran. So, we'll see where it goes. But hopefully they're using all the data from the gum shields, the neck monitors, and you're building a portfolio of how to figure out when subconcussive, the mini stuff that you talked about is registered, and then we can start looking after players that way.
I mean, I've done a lot of work with the progressive rugby, and after every sort of game or every international weekend, there seems to be two sort of thought processes. There's people who feel like we're doing a lot, and there's these guys, especially progressive rugby, who are pointing out the fact that so-and-so shouldn't have come back from a game, that we've still got a lot to learn, they're still not getting the protocols right, they're still not implementing it. So there's obviously a massive debate to be had. Whatever happens with this situation, it's obviously awful news for a fantastic guy, someone that's absolutely loved. It goes without saying that we all wish Ryan and his family all the best for the future, and we look forward to catching up with him very soon. Now,
should we have a little chat about Alex? He's the man, isn't he? He's back. You know, we've spent our whole life destroying his career. Now you just turn on every week, and especially those back-to-back games. He's just the ultimate pro, isn't he? Holds Sky Sports together. Payne.
Oh, he's been brilliant. I mean, it's
Along with
Plimsoll.
Dills.
His Plimsoll collection is.
It needs some serious work.
I mean, I wonder if if you sort of have to have rickets to wear them, or you get them having worn them, or you get a prescription. Because I don't know.
It's the only flaw, actually, probably.
That is.
It's probably the only flaw in his
But
game.
he is so polished. Like in comparison to someone like myself, or like a pretender to the throne, Alex Payne, Sky Sports. Now, have you watched any rugby? Because I know before when we were having a quiet pint across in the studio, there was a smidge of nerves about kind of your rugby knowledge.
I've cancelled my Sky subscription, to be honest. No, I'm not as up to date as I should be. Probably. I do follow it. I massively support England. Obviously, still. I'm still a fan.
Did you watch them beat New
New
Zealand on the weekend?
England, yeah, good. No, I'm close. There's no way I can watch. There's no way I can watch 4 games back to back on a Saturday. I just don't have the luxury that time.
But
busy and also like just for my own head.
Did you catch any of Alex Payne on TV?
Yeah, I've seen a fair bit of it, and I've worked with Alex a fair bit. Ultimate professional, and he's makes my life easy whenever you're doing any sort of Q&As or interviews and that.
He's just got a very rich voice, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he's rich anyway because of that kind of blue blood mentality. They're born with a silver spoon in and around their arse or mouth, where it is.
Yeah.
But he does it so well. And Dylan Hartley, revelation.
Do you know what he did do on the weekend though? He overused the phrase. It stuttered rather than sparkled. He used that quite a bit actually. Yeah.
There's only really room for one of them.
Yeah, there's only one. He used
How many times has he used that?
Yeah, he used it to describe the 2 games prior to Wales South Africa, and then he used it after the first half of England.
I'd say
as long as you don't watch all 4 games, you're all right.
I mean, I don't know what I overuse. I mean, I just probably overspeak. But Tinds is the king of literally.
Yeah.
And Alex has his Arsenal Hello Dream Team.
A lot of that.
Yeah.
Lot of Hello Dream Team. Hello Sports.
Canter around the course.
Canter around the course. And stuttered, not sparkled, is to add to that list. But he was utterly brilliant. But let's talk about the summer tours. I mean, I hate to say it because Alex is a proper Norse, right? He lives in, he was the kind of guy that used to go down to the Rec, not need, right? Little bath shorts with
completely
a little clacker.
Fanboyed me back in the day.
Fanboying, Mike, dribbling over Mike Cat, Jerry Guscott, like, we love it. Oh, well, and Mike Tyndall when Jerry broke a nail. But we actually got it right, Tins, you and I. I mean,
called it.
We said exactly how we thought it would be. We said 2-1 to Ireland.
Is this pre-series you got it?
Pre-series. Yeah. Bear in mind, I know probably less than you know, right? Yeah. And I run a world-class, I was going to say rugby pod, but that'd be bullshit. It's a world-class sports show. And we said 2-1 to Ireland, 2-1 to England. I also said 2-1 to South Africa. Tins had it 3-0. But I also didn't know who Argentina were playing. So before I get too hyped up, I didn't even know they were in the mix. And I got one right. So 4 from 4 for us.
Yeah, I think we talked about. I don't know what you think, Woody. For a long time, for such a certain period of time, New Zealand came with just that. The mindset of you stepping on the field. As much as you try and convince yourself during the week you're going to win, you know that you're playing the best team in the world, and it's very much forefront of your brain. Whereas at the moment, I said I think this team's vulnerable. I don't think they've got the spine of the team that they've had in the past, and now the pressure is completely flipped onto their side.
There was definitely an air of invincibility about New Zealand for a long time, wasn't there? Never mind going on that unbeaten streak of about 18 games, just in general. You play them, every team comes out the blocks, they have a great 30 minutes or so, and you're like, oh, they were on here. Argentina are going to beat New Zealand, and then it ends up like 40 points to not very many because they just cut loose in the last 15, 20 minutes and blow a team away. And whilst teams made a good fist of it for 20, 30 minutes, they never survived the onslaught in the second half. But like you say, they're obviously vulnerable at the minute, and Ireland... everyone's kind of leveling the playing field a little bit, I guess, but Ireland in particular did a number on them. Yeah,
it frustrated me a little bit. I was sat on the old Smutby group, and obviously there are a lot of them that are Saffers, and they go, this is the worst New Zealand team in 15 years. And I think that's quite harsh on New Zealand, because I think individually there are world-class players who are getting quite a lot of teams but at the moment they don't have that. They don't have what that book was written on. They don't have that team camaraderie at the moment. It's not all pulled together. But you remember what England went through post 2003 when you lose a spine of experienced nuggety players who just know how to win. You've got to turn that around again. People are questioning Sam Cane. it's not easy for him. It's not easy for him.
Fairly big shoes to fill.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. And people are saying, shit, Richie McCaw, but they're still probably a world-class player. So I think it's hard for them. I think obviously Foster's going to bear the brunt of it. It'll probably, with New Zealand, it's like nuclear meltdown over there.
They honestly, it'll be.
Yeah, they've gone back into lockdown.
Yeah.
Shut the country down.
Shut the country down.
Everyone's getting vaccinated again. Blame it.
But it's not vaccinated. They're doing those things like Men in Black where they're holding the lights up and flipping. Just look at the beam. You definitely didn't lose a series to Ireland.
Everything's going to be okay.
Okay.
Go back to work. Enjoy your life.
Ian Foster was never your coach. Because I honestly.
Neuralised.
Great knowledge. I am concerned because we need to talk about Ireland, but I think it is the very fact that we've started this whole dialogue talking about the New Zealand because we get some heat over here and we know our media are biased and we'll come on to that about the England sort of victory. But over in New Zealand, fuck me, they live and breathe it. And
it's not just the media though. It's like
everybody.
It's all 6 million people.
And the best thing is, if you've met a Kiwi that's left New Zealand, they're like so rounded. They can sort of see it. They're still quite noisy, but they're all rounded. If you've never met a Kiwi that's never left New Zealand and their whole sphere evolves around the All Blacks, that's all they know. And all they can talk about is if you go, right, okay, let's not talk about the All Blacks. They honestly don't have anything to say. They don't have anything to say. And I think it is harsh. I think it's very harsh. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Ardy Severe, unbelievable player. Sam Kane, unbelievable. Richie Mwanga, Bowden Barrett, all these guys are incredible. Rico Ioane. Mate, all of them. I mean, Will Jordan scoring that wonder try. Yeah. They are, I think, again, they're a team probably in transition which is not far off. But let's talk about enough about New Zealand. They get enough press. I mean, actually, fuck them because they've had my entire career. I mean, you got man of the match against them.
Sorry, man.
You're welcome.
Guilty.
You knew they weren't invincible when you pulled the pants down at Twickenham, didn't you?
Yeah, it's a pretty good day. I guess I did. I just genuinely went. I think I got some comments in the press and stuff about my sort of pre-match build-up and the way I approached it.
Love a good chip on the shoulder to go out and prove people wrong.
Yeah, but I just genuinely didn't really buy into it. I just saw them as human, and I just kind of embodied all of things that I'd been saying in the build-up, and it's hard to do that. I guess it came natural to me, but I guess it's hard to do that. I just loved it. I grew up watching Richie McCaw, and to be stood opposite him on the field and watched it sort of dawn on them that they weren't going to come back from this one, and they nearly did at one stage. Remember, we were winning a couple of scores up, just like I said. Kind of beat them twice that day because they did roll back into it and take the lead briefly, and then we pulled away again second half. So, I mean, you mentioned I got man of the match, but there were some unbelievable performances that day. Manu Tuolangi was different level. Chris Ashton scoring tries. Brad Barrett was phenomenal. Chris Robshaw in the back row alongside us. You came in and had a little cameo at the end, didn't you?
Did, yeah. Run around, tripped over a few rucks, got in the way.
A couple of inspected a couple of rucks.
Yeah, I did.
No, but it was just one of those days where everything came together. Boys played phenomenally well, and got the result we needed. But it was on the back of a pretty stop-start series. It stuttered, not sparkled, that series for a while.
I am interested, though, because I don't think a lot of people realise this. When you're in the England squad, so your England team, right, in that 2003, in that period before, you beat the Southern Hemisphere teams for fun. It's fair to say, really. Yes, they were quality, but none of them held a bit of a myth or a sort of a mythology for you, did they? No. So, but for us, I would say that we were lucky to take the field a million times together. We're pretty much in the same teams the whole way through. We were either trying to be coached like New Zealand, or everything was compared to New Zealand, or when we played them, all we talk about was New Zealand. It's amazing to actually finally see a team like Ireland just do a job on it.
Especially on the back of losing the first test, and you think that's kind of writing on the wall, end of a long season, you're away in the Southern Hemisphere, a long way from home. You've gone down 1-0, and it's like, well,
gone down badly 1-0 as well.
And it's like,
see, but that was
the scoreline was bad. I don't think the performance was.
I agree.
That's the thing that you go back to talking about New Zealand. There was a 10-minute period where New Zealand were unplayable in that first test, but Ireland probably dictated that, and which was the whole reason I said I think 2-1 is still on. There is no doubt. After Joe Smith was my sort of, when they were number one in the world. That was my hating of Ireland.
You hated Ireland.
Well, I just critiqued the way they played, and I said if someone figures out how to defend what everything that they do, I think they'll struggle to win. And then it was proved. They went on, and obviously England smashed them away, and then then the World Cup happened, and it all unravelled. But now it's taken longer than what I thought it would do with Andy Farrell, Mike Catt, and the other coaches. Paul O'Connell, but also Easterby, and what they've done is unbelievable. They've now taken the strengths that they had when they were world number one before, but then they've built on it. They've built an attacking game around it. They prod and prod inside out, outside Johnny Sexton. They'll now shift it wide, which they weren't doing 2 years ago. And it's fun. It's actually good to watch. High tempo, quick ruck speed. Keep the ball off the ground if they can. And it's great to watch. And, I think having those first 10 minutes that they had in all 3 tests, where they scored in 3 minutes, 7 minutes and 4 minutes in each 3 games. And then, they've always got that resilience when they're in a game and they've got something to play for. And we said after, when it went 1-1, Ireland, something to play for, prove people wrong. Yeah, and they lifted their game and won comfortably. And well deserved.
I mean, when you look at the spine of the team now, with Kane, Doris, Tig, Furlong, it's Johnny Sexton, obviously doing, Henshaw, all these boys are just on fire at the moment. And they're just playing so well. Peter O'Mahony in the back row. I mean, special mention to Peter O'Mahony.
Because he enjoyed it as well. He enjoyed it.
He enjoyed it. There's nothing, I mean, I love the fact on social media now, everyone's a paparazzi. We've talked about it a million times. I mean, I'm lucky I'm still here. I'm lucky I've even got a platform. I've been cancelled more times than I had hot dinners. And I'm sure there's more stuff to come out about me. Fingers crossed. But it was great to see this video flying around Peter O'Mahony, absolutely steaming, but being looked after.
Deserves to be.
Yeah, I know. I've got nothing problem. And he wasn't.
You're in trouble when Bundy Aki's looking after you. When he's the voice of reason, you're in trouble.
But also, what a good man. Bundy Aki just in a headlock, just clamped him in, just looking after him.
What I loved, he had to chase after him. He was getting away from him. And like you were said to, you can stay up with him. No, when there's a crowd and there's a few beers on show. Peter O'Mahony's got the best footwork he's ever had.
But I mean, look, Peter O'Mahony's been on his own journey, from kind of that Lions tour, from captaining it. We've joked about it on the pod before, ending up being team bin juice with me, the greatest fall from grace. But to see him out there playing well, and Johnny Sexton, the man's invincible.
I mean, that is the only question that still stands around that Ireland team. I think Gibson Park has come in and sort of filled the Conor Murray role that you weren't sure about. I think he's an exceptional 9. What happens if Sexton's not there? And who is Carberry ready to step in? Obviously, he's getting little cameos, but to run, say you go into a World Cup, can he run and you lose Johnny Sexton? Can you rely on him to run your whole campaign? Now, the strength around that from the front row to the, all the way through that pack, it's a world-class pack. And now I think they've got a world-class back line. But is Sexton so key that if he's out, we'll find out, won't we?
I mean, you've worked with Andy Farrell a few times. Just how good a coach is he? Because I think my wife and I were talking about it. She's a bit of rugby nose at heart. And we were just talking about it. Obviously I had him as I played with him in 2007. He was fantastic. You obviously got to play with him as well. Came on as a coach with Stuart Lancaster. He's done brilliant stuff with the Lions. But this head coach role, apart from looking fucking sexy as fuck with that beard, he seems
got that
to...
from me.
Come on.
Yeah. Taught him everything I know.
Seems to be doing an incredible job, and the boys want to play for him. And everyone in the media interviews, they talk about like a special group of players. He is that kind of bloke, isn't he?
Yeah, he was always real charismatic. I mean, you'll remember, he could deliver a speech and fire the boys up. I mean, his role with England was always defence, and that's a fairly simple role in terms of revving the boys up, getting the most out of people, getting people buying into putting their bodies on the line for each other. And I'm just really pleased to see him go. Him, Stuart Lancaster, and Graham Rowntree were under, basically left the England job under a cloud of shit, didn't they? Because just things didn't go to plan in 2015, and they were all sort of down and out at that point and probably picking themselves off the canvas and wondering what next. And to see Stuart Lancaster go over to Leinster and do such a good job, and the boys absolutely love him over there. They haven't got a bad word to say about him. After the media storm that sort of surrounded him, Andy Farrell's gone over to the Ireland job and stepped up and then done a phenomenal job. And Graham Rowntree was here at Munster now, and bossing it. So, 3 guys that we cast aside, our heads were all in the sand to pick themselves up and go on and do that. I'm just chuffed for all 3 of them, really. But Andy Farrell in particular, at the moment with Ireland, he was a charismatic guy that had good ideas and stuff. And now he's got the head job. He's obviously he's running the ship.
Do you think this Ireland are now the real deal? We've talked about them peaking before World Cups. Before, do they have what it takes to go on and challenge the likes of France, Africa? and all the rest.
I think they do. I think what are they sat number 2 in the world at the moment? France for the first time have taken. Oh no, Ireland have jumped them with that win. I think Ireland now.
I love how you're looking at me as if I'd have any idea. Yes, mate, I'm playing chess. That's a lie.
That's a lie.
I'm watching porn. That was a test. You passed it.
Actually, you laughed.
You
failed it.
failed. No, you haven't got the job.
Anyway, I don't know what the current standings are with 1 or 2,
cares?
but I do think they're going in now. The biggest thing for next year in that World Cup is and this is good for England. So if England can sort their stuff out, England have to beat either Wales or Australia to make a final, basically, or both.
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done. But out of Ireland, France, New Zealand, South Africa, only one of them can get to the final. So which side would you prefer to be on? England will be pretty happy where they get where they are. Now, I think France is still the best team in the world at the moment. But you look at South Africa, they're made for World Cups. But this Ireland team, without doubt now, I think they've completely revolutionised how they play, their outlook on where they are. Strength in depth, do they introduce new players enough in terms of making sure that if people go down next year, they're in a good spot? That would be my only question mark. But that's probably not what they're worried about, right? They're worried about running into next year, running into the Six Nations, looking at a Grand Slam for Six Nations. I think they've got 3 home games this year. So, they're going to be up there as favourites. And I think they're definitely top 3 a shout of taking home the title next year.
I saw on Twitter, and Twitter's never wrong. They're number 1. They leapfrogged, didn't they? They went to the number 1 spot with that win over New Zealand. I'm pretty sure.
France did play this weekend, did they? That's why.
I mean, I think we've obviously joked a bit. We've talked a bit about New Zealand. We've talked a little bit about Ireland. And we could do an entire show on how good Ireland are. But I think it's just a point to kind of mention that, only a couple of teams have won a series in New Zealand. I mean, again, Alex talked about the stat last week. New Zealand haven't been beaten at Eden Park since 1994. And Andy Farrell in post-interview says that this, his exact words were, and I wasn't sure what he meant by this, because what we know now, we know that this will not be done next year or in the future for a period of time. And I don't know what he meant by, we don't know, what we know now, whether he knows it'll be a 2-match series, or we're not going to come back from New Zealand, or we're not going back to New Zealand, or things are going to change. But that to do that to a New Zealand side, that feat is incredible. I mean, I think it's right up there with anything you could do in rugby, isn't it?
Well, we were there in 2014, and we probably went with fairly high hopes, didn't we? We were a confident side at the time, playing pretty good rugby, and it's always difficult because it's the end of our season and everyone's a bit sort of jaded, and you're trying to get up for what should be the pinnacle, going and play New Zealand in New Zealand, but bodies are breaking down at the end of a long season. People have played semi-finals and finals and premierships and stuff. It's a disjointed affair. You get over there, you've got an extended squad because you've played in those finals and people are joining you late. And so if you remember, we played the first test without half of our premiership finalists and things like that. But at the end of the day, we lost 3-0. We ran them very close in the first game, probably played above ourselves a little bit and were confident. And I think we only lost by a point or 2. We played them in Dunedin, made a good fist of it, but lost by more than a score in the end. And then just the wheels fell off in Hamilton, and we weren't even really ever in the game. So having gone over there thinking, we've got a good team, we've got good strength and depth here, we've got a big squad, go over and give them a run for their money, ultimate outcome was 3-0. So having beat them in 2012 and thought that you might have found the golden key or whatever, you get over there and get pretty humbled. So for Ireland to go over there and, like I say, the biggest thing for me was bouncing back from the first loss and going on and winning a series 2-1 is pretty impressive.
I mean, I think, congratulations to Ireland. And honestly, one of the things that fans always talk to us about is when they come up to us at the live shows, they always go, oh, sorry, I'm an Ireland supporter, I'm a Wales supporter, I'm a Leicester supporter. And as if we care. I could not have been more excited that Ireland beat New Zealand. And again, I've got mates in the New Zealand team. I love New Zealand. I love an underdog. I love a story. I love a challenge. And for Ireland to do that in the way they did that with the team and sort of the old dogs, and even someone like Johnny Sexton we mentioned earlier, he was written off by Warren Gatland, in the Lions, and was told that basically he wasn't good enough, but also they wanted resilient players. The big question mark over Johnny Sexton. And I would say that the last period of time has been the biggest 2 fingers up.
I think when he said resilient, I think it was more Johnny's body rather than his mental. We all know how strong he is mentally. But that's what good players do. They bounce back, and that's what world-class players do, which obviously Johnny Sexton is. Would anyone really have argued that he was playing well enough on that Lions tour? But he comes back refreshed. One thing that Ireland do, look after their players, allow them to refresh. And obviously he's still got it.
It's amazing how Tinds has changed his tune. In 2 years, he's now a massive Ireland fan. Cut him, he'll bleed green, apparently. But we'll get on to Wales, who he now hates. It's not my fault. I love everybody love everybody. The words of who is it he says here?
It's
semi-pro, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everybody love everybody?
Yeah, what's his name?
Love me sexy.
Love me sexy. Of course you do.
Jackie Moon.
Jackie Moon. Everybody love everybody.
Gonna put some sugar on this.
That's what we should do in the world. Everybody love everybody. Jackie Moon. Right, well, England sealed at 2-1.
We needed that washing machine.
They traded him, didn't they? I wonder if I get traded for a washing machine. Probably find out Watts traded me for Brad Shields and a washing machine. Good, they got a bargain. I broke down not long after. England sealed a 2-1 series win in Sydney. And Tinds, we said last week, it was a vital game for both teams in their World Cup planning. A massive one for Eddie. How much of a pressure release on the old Eddie Jones valve is that?
Yeah, I think generally, if you look at performances from the Six Nations, they just attack, didn't really fire at all. I think there was a nice little moment in that third test for Marcus Smith. There were some question marks around him where they just now, because he's played.
His lid, that was number one question mark. I know lid envy, but it's got a certain level of bounce, and the bounciness fucks me off a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? It's because he's got everything going for him. He's talented, he's good looking, but it just bounces with a certain level of volume that you sort of want to go.
It's why everyone falls for the goose, because he throws the hair first and like, oh, he's gone. No, he hasn't. Oh, no. You
used to sport a bit a long lid, didn't you? Remember when you were full wilderness wood?
Around 2016, I went full wilderness, and I enjoyed that moment. I enjoyed it. I rolled with it for probably a year, 18 months or something. I just like to mix
as much
it up.
Juice as you could out of it.
I just like to mix it up, keep people guessing. No one get too comfortable. Just keep everybody on their toes. Yeah.
So I interrupted. So you talk about how good Marcus Smith was, because he was that solo try.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's just popped up into his hands, but still to outstrip Corabetti is never easy. There was physical. I mean, Genge played out with skin. We talked about Courtney earlier and what he did. I thought Will Stewart played really well as well. So there were performances throughout that, whether it be Danny Kerr. Obviously, there was question marks because he got taken off at 35 minutes, and Eddie played it down in the fact that, mate, we usually go 55-25, I went 35-45 this time. Tactical. But he's always got an answer, hasn't he, Eddie?
Do you think that's because we both know Danny Kerr, both love Danny Kerr? I was on TalkSport this morning, sorry about that, and I asked a similar question, and I actually said, look, I think it was harsh for Danny. It's not the first time we've seen that happen with Luther Burrell. Luther Burrell's come out recently and said very vocally that it affected him, damaged his confidence. And I would have said it would have been a massive shock to the system if we hadn't seen Sean Edwards bring on Aola Rinley as a sub and then take him off as a sub, and seen that happen 3 or 4 times. That was kind of a mad thing that
Eddie
happened.
did it to Taymana as well, didn't he?
Yes. And he's not frightened to do that. But I mean, I'll ask you both. Did you know Danny a bit more than that? Do you see a problem with that? Do you think Danny would be fucked off?
Look, he'll say it's tactical, but as long as him and Danny can have a square conversation about it, and whether it wasn't tactical or whether it was, and they can stay straight down the line and stay as a team and say it was. Danny will be fine with that. I think with Danny, you've got a robustness through his experience. Obviously, he's been in the wilderness.
I thought he played great as well. Yeah. I thought he had played well in that tour.
He did make a few mistakes in that first half that were not usual for Danny. So, but I would you sort of expect his experience. He never gets rattled by that. But then Van Poortvliet played so well in the second test anyway. I think he's probably confident in both nights. So
what would you be interested to see if there's any conversation had beforehand, as if it was preempted, like be ready, mate, you might come off at 30, 35 or whatever. We're actually looking to make an early sub. So at least he's got his head round it, or whether it's like, hang on a minute, I'm being subbed in the.
It's quite a harsh one that though, because what happens if he gets injured?
You can't. You can't set anything in stone.
It's difficult to put down as tactical because
that's what I mean. Because we've learned a lot from this podcast that your every answer around concussion was if he's been down the street fighting, which is a whole nother show as to what the fuck you were doing as a kid. But I would quite like to know. I would say that you're one of the best things I talked about in my first book, What a Flanker, about how your honesty. I loved you as a teammate. You didn't take shit. You're not a people pleaser. You're not placatory. You would say it how it was. Eddie Jones hauls you off 10 minutes before half time. What's Tom Wood doing?
I mean, I'd be fuming, but it's a question of would I be fuming at myself or fuming at him? If I'd underperformed and, you know, I knew I was kind of due it, and fair play, Eddie had made a big call, because it's always a big call to take someone off before half time. It's tough for a coach to actually make that call, but if that's what's best for the team and he's done it, and on reflection you look back and think, man, I was underperforming, or I was injured, or I wasn't quite right, I'd made a couple of errors. This is England rugby in a, you know, deciding test. There's no room for sentimentality, or, you know, I'd either be fuming at myself for letting myself down, or I'd be fuming at the coach for making a bad decision.
And what happens to a coach that you fume at?
Oh no, nothing really. You know, I mean, I'd definitely front him up and have a square conversation, as Tin said, and be like, you know, explain that one to me. But
bit like out of Maneth maketh man, you know, Kingsman. Yeah. Would you go into a little room with Eddie, you know, full Kingsman spec, manners maketh man, turn around and have it out with him, or would you just have a little quiet word in the corner?
No, I definitely want to know his thinking on it. Right. And knowing Eddie, he'd tell you his thinking on it. There wouldn't be any like beating around the bush. You know, I mean, I've had similar run-ins, not with being pulled off before half time, but I've been dropped by Eddie before, and I've been told that you're not picked, or that, you know, you need to do more. And I've stood my ground and defended myself where necessary, and taken feedback where I think it's appropriate. But I've had tough conversations, and the guy tells you as it is, and I appreciate that way of operating. I don't appreciate it when I feel like it's mind games and someone playing games with you and trying to get the best out of you by, you know, manipulating the situation a bit, or bluffing you and things like that. But as long as he tells you straight what he expects from you, and where you let yourself or let the team down, then fair enough. Luckily, I've never personally been in that position, but I have been dropped and been told I'm not good enough. And, you know, the first thing to do is go and say you even know it deep down. If you know it deep down, then there's no point going having a conversation. If you miss tackles, if you drop balls, if you made mistakes, you know, then, you know, you reap what you say. You got to take that on the chin and go and be better. If the guy competing for your position is pulling up trees and playing the house down, sometimes you just got to tip your cap and go, fair play, the guy's on fire. I've got to get back to work and see if I can improve. But it's when the coach makes a rash call that you don't agree with, that you're thinking, hang on a minute, like you've thrown me under the bus there, or made me a scapegoat or something. Then you've got to go and have a tough conversation, and that would be my approach.
On Eddie Jones in particular, obviously there's a great video doing the rounds. He's walking onto the field to celebrate with the team. Aussie bloke leant over the barrier, called him a traitor. Eddie's turned round and fired up with all his Ranwick mic from back in the day, ready to fight, and he said, "Come fucking say that to me, mate. Come and say that over here.
Get over here, mate."
Yeah. I mean, what's your view on that?
Look, when I watched it, I was like, well, it's sort of, I see it from both sides of it. I think he overreacts a little bit, but then the more that we're hearing, there might have been something said at half time as well that might have been some little other niggle points. You know, it's the old thing of fans think they can say whatever they want until someone turns around and tells them
but
not.
Forget they're not on social media.
That guy shrunk more. Yeah,
he did. Shrunk like a willy in an ice bath.
That was the interesting bit, because he did fully just dissolve, didn't he?
He did. You know, like an effervescent, like an aspirin in just lukewarm water. It just fizzed away.
Faded into
That's
the
Eddie
night.
Jones. I mean, I as a player, and this person, and obviously, as we all know from my reputation, I'm not great at PR, not understanding how the circumstances, but I saw that, I was like, fuck yeah. Because I tell you why, if it just been a bit of shit, but because they question Eddie's integrity, it's either call a man a liar and call a man a traitor in his loyalty, and you deserve everything you get. And I think that bloke forgot he wasn't on social media in his nan's basement, quietly tapping away. I mean, as a player, did you like it when coaches went after people?
As a player, I'd have enjoyed that from a head coach, just leading from the front a little bit and not taking a backward step. You'd always talk about not taking a backward step, fronting up the opposition, and then you got someone gobbing off in the crowd in the wrong colour shirt, and you're like, well, come on then, like, you know, come and say it down here. I thought fair play to him. I enjoyed it. I definitely agree with Tinds. I do see both sides of it. In some ways, you think, you know, can you rise above those things? Do you lower yourself to getting into a bit of back and forth with some random fan? And I've heard people refer to him as a nobody. Why would you lower yourself and get embroiled in that? But a part of me thinks you've got no right to just run your mouth, you know, openly, publicly.
Not round you, it was your childhood.
No, but like, how it's the old Mike Tyson thing, isn't it? You know, everyone's got a bit comfortable with saying gobbing off on social media and no consequences, not getting pushed in the mouth for it. And this guy, you just saw it happen in real time, ran his mouth, thought he was hilarious in front of his mates, gets caught on camera, shrinking and like dissolving like an effervescent tablet.
Because also what everyone always forgets is that Eddie bought came up as a half Japanese, half Australian in Australia, which back in the day was not known for its kind of cosmopolitan views. I mean, even that tour that we went to, the bus driver, pretty much he would have been cancelled real quickly in 2022 for some of his views. But he obviously played, and he wasn't particularly big, so he had a real physical edge. And I was talking to Joe Marr about this. I mean, sometimes in training, though, Eddie would get caught and get bumped over, and everyone would be like, oh my God, we've killed him. Yeah. But I reckon that he would have attached that guy like a spider monkey and just gouged his eyes out and ripped him up before he could have done anything. Do you back him?
Yeah, I back him, yeah. Well, you could just see like the mindset of the two people, how one shrank and one grew. Yeah. You know what I mean? So one was attacked and he grew and he called the bloke out face to face, and the guy just completely evaporated.
It's like that scene out of Snatch. Yours has a replica down the side. Mine has Desert Eagle, 0.50. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot written about Eddie and his approach to training. He was massively praiseful of Courtney Lawes, who I want to talk to you about, Woody, because Courtney's always been an incredible player, but he seems to now be just in a different stratosphere, and the leadership seems to have made him grow even bigger, which is nigh on impossible.
Yeah, like you say, phenomenal talent, athlete all through his career. Started with a bang, was always an impact tackler. I think he had a YouTube's highlight reel by the time he was about 21 of just absolutely levelling people.
Without the ball. 400 hits, not one bloke had the ball.
Is it the French one that's the best?
God. Yeah, police on. But he's done loads and phenomenal highlights reel. But as you say, he just gets better every year. There's probably a period of time about 4 or 5 years ago where I thought, man, we might be seeing the end of him. Like he's picked up ankle injuries, knee injuries, his joints are failing him. And the amount of hits his shoulders and that have taken, is he going to be able to sustain this much longer? And, he's on the physio bed a little bit. I thought, man, this might be actually him winding down now. But since then, he's completely turned it around and wound it up through the gears. And now he's, pretty well nailed on for captain through to the World Cup, I'd say, now, the way he's led that team. And it's a great style of leadership. He's not it's not a massive talker. He's not in the huddles like revving up and shouting all the time. He's a leader by example. He's got huge gravitas and credit in the bank and experience and all that to lean back on. And the guys obviously respect him. But the thing about not talking very often is when he does speak, he's an intelligent bloke and people listen. So he keeps his powder dry for the right moments, and then delivers the hammer blow when it's needed, obviously. But also, like, because of his personality off the pitch, he's laid back and calm. He's not like a super intimidating or intense bloke off the pitch. So I think that kind of rubs off on everybody else. And Eddie Jones has probably lent that way a little bit. I've heard rumours about like the training's just calmed down a little bit. And it's got, at the end of a long season, like we said earlier, you're away a long way from home. It's more about getting the team together and getting the mindset right than it is beasting people day in, day out on tour. So seems to have worked.
I've heard it called a lot of things, but not gravitas. He's got huge gravitas. Yeah. We all know he's got gravitas, Sheep, if that's what you want to call it. But again, I think he's obviously a different, to Owen Farrell. Sorry, to Owen Farrell's kind of sabre. He's a bit like a foil to it, and Courtney. They're two very different characters. Owen, I think he's developed into a fantastic captain, but he's sort of always on. Courtney, kind of different approach. They seem to be linking really well from what Eddie Jones said.
Yeah, and I think Courtney's, I know that he won't like this, but sits a little bit like of the Jono sort of esque in the fact that you don't need to say lots, but when you say, people listen. And Eddie's used, I think, that exact phrase is he doesn't need to say a lot, but when he does say, people generally pay attention. And being a captain is people wanting to feed off what you give them, and I think then you just look at what turns out on the pitch and how much work he's done, how much he's improved. You think about that way he chased back and try-saving tackle that he made, and
Tonga.
He makes impacts.
You're like that.
That's genuinely like my highlight of like the rugby calendar. Yeah. I think that's the best thing ever. Yeah. I know people love like one-handed try scoring, acrobatics and stuff like that. I love things like that.
Yeah, I agree.
And if I was teaching my boy or the kids at grassroots level about being back row play and forward play and what it means to play rugby, that's the example I give. In a game that you're going to win, you're comfortable in relatively, you're captain, one of the most experienced players, and everybody would forgive you and no one would notice if you just hit cruise control and
let them score
and jogged back and left it to the winger and the fullback to fix that situation and potentially concede a try. to chase back like that, to stay in the fight and to make a try-saving tackle like that. And you see the clip going around on Twitter at the minute of his work rate to cover on the inside against Australia, make the tackle, get back to his feet, counter-ruck, turnover, then carry the next phase. At his age, at his experience level as captain in like the 79th minute of a test match at the end of an 11-month season, that's just off the charts. You can't credit him enough with things like that.
He seems very happy as well, Courtney.
That's the kind of example that you set to the rest of the team. You've got lots of young players coming in, uncapped players, inexperienced players playing for the first time. When you're following that, everything's easy, isn't it? Like, you just do that, basically. Follow Courtney. Easy, job done.
Listening to what Eddie Jones has talked about, he said Ellis Genge was brilliant. I mean, just how good is Genge playing at the moment?
He's getting better and better. Last week it was Hooper that he just physically dismantled, and then this week it was Karevi.
Why would you ever go high? Simon Karevi, I think he's an unbelievable player. I think he's utterly brilliant. I follow him on Instagram. He's a great player. But why would you ever go high on the baby rhino? A man that runs with just utter sheer
open play with a jump spider tackle. Just not.
And in that sequence of play, he did that. He got up. He got round the corner. He ran over someone else. He got up again, carried again, and you can just see that he's loving what he's doing at the moment. He loves
massively backing himself as well. Just happy to just take it in. But he's also got subtlety to his game. He does tip the ball on occasionally. He does draw people in and make little sort of offloads and things. It's not just all just charging into the nearest biggest bloke.
Everyone talks about his leadership in the team now. It's become, so when England played United States and Canada at Twickenham, Eddie Jones made him captain for one of those games. And he said that he was utterly brilliant in camp because he wanted players to be themselves. He wanted them to have fun. He sort of wanted to have a character. But he seems to have carried that on, even with the old heads like Owen back, with Courtney back, all the boys. He seems to have a real important role.
But I think you'd say this about like 2003 group. How many Johnny was captain, obviously, but how many leaders do you have in the team? Like through the core of the team, and that's what you need for like World Cup winning teams, for top like iconic, sustainable winning, not just peaking and winning a single game. You need a core of the team, and if you've got a loose head rampaging like that, you've got the experience of Jamie George now. You've got the likes of Courtney. You've got Itoje, who could be captain. You've got Courtney. Through the whole team, you've got those kind of leaders, and then you've got Owen Farrell coming back into the team. Obviously, been captain for a long time, bossing it. That's what wins tournaments and series and sustains it over a long period of time.
I mean, it's just, I think as well, one of Genji's strengths is how refreshing he is.
Yeah.
Like he leads, but he doesn't lead in a stereotypical leader's way. He is his own person. He knows his faults, his failures, but he also knows his strengths, and he focuses more on his strengths whilst trying to improve his weaknesses. He's sort of, as a young man, probably rolled up and down in terms of emotionally, and I think he then just makes people feel comfortable in their own skin. And in that environment, that's what you need to be. You need to be feeling comfortable. Eddie will take you out of that comfort zone, but someone like Ellis just keeps you in.
He's just unapologetically himself, basically. Yeah.
And he encourages that of other people. And then, that gives everyone the
I think Jack Noel as well, another friend of the show. I promise you there are other players that we are into than just the ones that come on the good, the bad, the rugby. But Jack Noel, again, he's been playing very, very well. But Eddie's full of praise for him. We had him on the show, and he actually on the podcast. He talked quite strongly about kind of Exeter and his honesty around the fact they probably lost their way a little bit. But Jack does it really. I think Jack carried on doing that with England. Both of them want to set that tone where they want. I think the boys to have fun. You obviously had a bit of experience with them as well. I mean, do you think the secret to the England's success and the success moving forward is for those players to come to the fore and for Eddie Jones to take a bit more of a back seat?
I think that's good within any organisation. The more you can impart autonomy and responsibility towards the playing group, the guys that are actually responsible for it on the field, the better position you'll be. Now, there's a balance to be had between sort of being lazy and not actually doing any work and just saying over to you boys. You've got to be interactive, you've got to be supportive and facilitating. But if you think that as a coach you can control everything and be super overbearing and drive standards and everything, then when the guys get on the pitch, they'll be lost because they're on their own. Once you cross the white line, you're on your own as 15 players. So to develop those leaders, to develop those characters within the team so that they're confident, got responsibilities and can make on-field decisions as well as, the off-field management of the training week, the social stuff, everything else that goes on. When they feel like it's their team and they're running the show, you'll get the best out of them. If they feel like they're just yes, no, sir to the coach, then you're not going to get the best out of people like that. That's not sustainable.
Has this finally shut up the critics? Is now everyone now going to be behind Eddie Jones?
You know, we
you're
talk about this
you're one game away from
we
them
talk
all
about
coming.
this all the time. You're only one game away. I still think England, as attack, has still got little bits to improve on. But I thought we saw quite good glimpses. We saw some really nice lines hit. We saw quite a few line breaks. I thought Freeman did well on the wing. Actually, carved a few people.
Lewis
up,
Ludlam, I thought was brilliant as well.
Yeah,
He was-
easy
he was-
for me to talk
he's
about
been-
Lewis because he's a teammate, obviously, but like he made some big impacts.
But
and,
he's been brilliant off the bench, and then he continued with the start. So yeah, I mean, it's quite nice to have that. You're looking at our back row, going, well, actually, we've lost under Norse, we've lost.
Curry goes home early, and you think you're
Yeah.
up against it, and then someone like Lewis steps in, and
I thought he did a fantastic
Big
job.
Bill. What I love about
Billy was back to his best.
but do you know what? I think a lot of people haven't really picked up on that story that Eddie obviously binning binning Mako for a period of time, putting them out to kind of almost to see, to test them. I feel like it was a test. That I know Eddie well. I think it was a bit of a test to see either he kicks on for Saracens, plays well enough, and has the hunger to come back in, or he lets him go and he goes to other players. But I think Billy's obviously just gone, right, I'll show you. Fuck you, two fingers up to him, and has come back in and he's back to his best. And when Billy's does what he does, he's utterly fantastic.
I mean, the thing with English rugby in general is Eddie's got the luxury of doing that because he's got so many good players to pick from. And, you could pick a Don Brandt, you've got Callum Chicken, you've got Sam Simmons when he's on fire and fit. There's so many players that you could pick throughout the league to make up a back row balance that, it's just an embarrassment of riches, really. The difficult thing is getting the balance right on any
Ben
given
Earl
day.
didn't even get on the flipping tour, when he was Premiership player of the season.
Ben Earl could have played 6, 7 or 8 for them, couldn't he, really? So it's depending what, it's all about, it's subjectivity, it's what the coach likes, the style of rugby he's going to play, and then the balance of that back row. But to have the luxury of just sending Billy off into the wilderness for a bit, out to pasture and just go, just
see what you got.
Yeah, find out how he's going to respond to that, and to bring Big Bill back on,
to do it and do it so well. I mean, there's one person that will be absolutely devoted by this, and we give him a name check quite regularly. He hasn't been in contact. We probably will. Clive Woodward. He'll be kicking stones, fucking slack, because he's desperate to get that job over Eddie Jones, isn't he? The sort of director of rugby. He talks about Eddie being a maverick and he needs containing. So he's written him off every single week, and Eddie unfortunately has now done it and bought him a bit more time.
But it's always, It is a quite hard frustration, around Billy. I'd say also the way that England played at one point, where they just sent Billy into brick walls, didn't allow Billy to play well. Whereas now he's picking off the base of his run. He's using footwork first before he goes into contact. He's back to offloading a lot more. He's not just,
and he was on a link pass to Genji to run over Karevi.
Exactly. He went through a period of just one out running, and that isn't where you get the best out of Mako or Billy.
No,
they need to be ball players.
It doesn't matter how big you are in the modern game. You're not just running through.
But I think that became England's game plan. Mako or Billy, if you stood anywhere near them, you were never going to get the ball. I spent most of my career as a dummy runner.
Inside clear.
I was inside clear.
I'm open.
Dummy Hask.
Or I'd be set up, ready, waiting, hands up, nervously shaking, and Mako. Hask, get the fuck out of the way and move out of the way. Or Billy would run a cutting line
inside
with 7 people out in front of you. And I think now they've got more of a balance. And I think, like you said, they have got a wealth of riches. Actually,
but it's not as reliant. I mean, you lost Marrow, but I thought Johnny Hills played his role in these 3 tests. Now, it might not necessarily always be rugby related, but just to be an absolute thorn in people's side.
And he's such a big unit. You need
winding
that.
people up, looking like a hillbilly, acting like a hillbilly, pulling hair. Just Nick White, they're just pinning him on the floor, letting him know he's there, sort of, just making a nuisance out of it, and it winds people up. And I think he played that. Look back to Justin Harrison and Austin Healy, just being that sort of big bad wolf. That is sort of what Johnny, just to take people off their game, and it doesn't affect him. So it's a perfect role for him to play.
We're very positive. We're always very positive about England, but I think it's very exciting. I think they're in a good place. I think it's probably.
It's amazing we've managed to do an hour and 15 on rugby before we actually got talking about. Should we just let's quickly sum up the other games?
Yeah, Wales, South Africa.
Yeah, Wales. I just think they ran out of steam. Obviously, they were down a few as well, and South Africa did what they did. They overpowered them, and well done to them. I thought I think we both thought they were going to struggle in that third test. I think they missed out on that first test. To lose that in the last minute. Argentina Scotland, I turned it off after 50 minutes because I thought it was a breeze. And then obviously, they come back and score. Argentina come back and score 2 to win it in the last 20 minutes, and with the last one being in the 81st minute or whatever it was. So I didn't see that coming, and I didn't even say I watched it because I thought it was just going to be. They looked so comfortable, Scotland. They played well. Obviously, not having Finn Russell and Hoggy there. I don't think for them it's the be all and end all. I think it was more of testing a few other players at the same time. But Watson got his 50th cap, didn't he? So
he did.
Congratulations to him. Friend of the show.
He's another friend of the show. We only talk about friends of the show.
And then finally, we've got to give Chile a little bit of a shout
out.
They obviously beat USA in a rugby in the World Cup qualifier, so they are now going into the World Cup for the first time in their history. If you've seen the celebrations after the game, they were insane. And
what would a night out in Chile be like?
Well, two of the guys in the team had surnames of Escobar. So
excellent.
I'm just going to say there might be a secret bet on Chile to win the World Cup if Escobar. They're bringing the
a lot of people actually get kneecapped or people disappear suddenly.
Well, it's the story of the goalkeeper.
Yeah, they shot him, didn't they?
Yeah. You never know.
He got that team was it? Yeah, I don't which. I think it was Chile that he lost. They let the goal in. They
the World Cup's not in Chile, is it?
If it is, good bad rugby there, front and centre. Well, look, we've talked enough about that. I mean, I can't believe Tinds and I got the stats right, but we need to move on. We need to talk about you, Woody, because you've obviously called it a day. But let's have a look back at your stats. I mean, they never tell the whole story, but they are super impressive. 50 caps for England. England captain. Premiership winner, Heineken Cup finalist, and 12 years at Saints, and unashamedly described by all who know you as a Saints legend and all-round top man. Now, we had
2 conversions for the Barbarians.
2 conversions. But honestly...
1 cap, 2 conversions.
100%
kicking record.
But one of them, like, I know we had George Cruz on, and it's quite a nice segue. We had George Cruz on, who obviously did 3 conversions in front of the post, and one of them was a back kill, right? Yeah. Just talk us through what
great fun to watch.
Great fun.
I loved it. Just put me in a corner a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, but tell us about your conversion, because I don't think people have appreciated it. It's available on social media, your social media and YouTube. But just tell all the fans at home what happened.
We played Spain away in Spain. It was a great week. Properly lived up to all the sort of hype of Barbarians week. Proper social week. Community work in the day. Bit of token training, playing touch rugby down the beach, and then dinners out every night, big steak, and then out on the beers pretty much every night. The training was, real sort of low key.
Touch rugby.
Yeah, touch rugby on the beach largely. Yeah, just sweat it out. And then went on to play Spain, and the first 20 minutes was a little bit dusty. Boys weren't as sharp as they could be. But the coach had said, we'd all been practicing kicking in the week, hadn't we? The big Dev Toner was there, all 6'11" of him, swinging his size.
Swinging his leg.
Mate, swinging his size 18 shoes at the, Clark shoes at the ball. And we've been slotting them all week, and, end of training, all the forwards grab a tee and stick a few balls over. And, I've always just been supremely confident kicking the ball. I did it as a teenager up my local rugby club all the time. Never had the opportunity in a professional game. So just there was a quiet part of me that just thought, give me the tee, and I don't want to do it from under the post because it seems a bit sort of nothingness. If I get it, no one cares. Yeah. If I miss it, just be a laughing stock. So I thought, if we get one from the halfway line or the touch line, I'll have a crack. And the coach had actually said to the captain, Hadley Parks, like, I'm all for the forwards having a kick, and good luck to them. Let them enjoy their last game, but let's win the game first. You know what I mean? Like, you'll know when the time.
All jokes aside, let's get the win. Yeah,
yeah. You'll know when the
Classic
time. You know when the time's right. Basically, we score like 2 tries. Game's still in the balance, really, and I just grabbed the tee, and you could see his head in his hands in the stand, like thinking, what is going on? Like, and it's from the touchline as well, like quite a long way out. So. I just grabbed it and just smashed it straight through. No messing, no twitching, none of this.
Yeah, Macarena, Dan Bigger Macarena, Johnny Wilkinson.
Just a couple of steps back, one to the side.
The hobnail,
smoked it straight through.
22-inch studs and just hoofed it over.
Yeah, steel toe caps.
It was an incredible kick.
I would have loved you to do the full Macarena. Just imagine.
Yeah, they just bosh it through. Yeah, it was a great way to retire. I had a shoulder injury and had my shoulder fully rebuilt sort of February time. So I worked really hard, but I didn't manage to get back on the field back end of the season for Saints. I'd have loved to have played a part in, semi-final, potentially a final if things had gone well. But it was real touch and go, and I just wasn't quite ready. And the boys were playing so well, I wasn't going to get picked even if I did forge my way back into contention and fitness. So, just to have that extra week's grace and to get out for the Barbarians and have a run around and retire with my boots on was a real privilege. And to do it in the famous jersey as well, sort of iconic jersey, was dream come true. A bit of a bucket list thing to do.
How does not playing those last few games with Saints sit with you? Because you're the ultimate competitor. One of the always giving everything for Saints. Is it because you got the Barbarians ending? That was fine. It kind of smoothed it over, or how disappointed were you to sort of go out, on your shield, but not quite finishing it off as you would have wanted?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because there's a huge part of me that would have loved to have been out there competing. It would have been an absolute fairy tale ending to have played in semi-finals and finals, to have come back from injury and with all the history we as Northampton and me personally have had with Leicester, to go and topple them in a semi-final away from home and go into a final and potentially lift a trophy. That would have been an absolute fairy tale, but no one's owed a fairy tale in rugby, you know what I mean? It just doesn't happen. Not many players get to go out like Richie and McCaw at a World Cup, lifting the trophy and just signing off double World Cup winner with 100 plus caps and captain, and just sail off into the night.
Dan Carter slotting one over with his wrong foot.
Yeah.
And the best thing is that now Richie McCaw is like running around doing like Iron Men, not a scratch on him. I can't walk
like
up
he's
the
never
stairs.
played.
Yeah. I click. People are like, oh, mate, I think he's getting a new ankle. I was like, no, that is the new ankle.
So not everyone gets that. So that's, you're just not owed anything, and I've got nothing to complain about. We mentioned Rob Horne earlier, mentioned Ryan Jones. Like, I'm relatively intact. I've got my bumps and bruises, obviously. I've got some issues, but generally I'm in one piece. I retire in one piece, fit and healthy, and you got hopefully a long life and career after rugby to get into. So I'm looking forward to all of that. It would have been an absolute fairy tale to finish in that way with Saints, but I got my little cameo with the Barbarians, and that's not. Also, Saints did it right. They gave me a great send off. All the players that were leaving, we had a big party at the end of the last game. Got us on the pitch, last home game. All the fans come on the pitch, do little Q&A and stuff on there, get presented with a shirt. The boys got me a nice present.
What did they get you?
They got me a knife.
Of course they did.
Yeah, I was going to retire the year before, so I think it's been an Alex Wallace draw for like a year. But basically, they got me a custom handmade knife with my England cap number and my Saints number.
By the way, for people listening, he's not a serial killer.
Not we know about. Publicly.
I assume the knife is to be used with wood and carving and
hunting, hunting, fishing and stuff. So it's
that knife's going into some sort of poor deer at some point. Not poor deer like an old lady.
Stop talking.
It's got my England cap number on and my Saints cap number, and that was from the boys. And we had a really good send off. They did a big guard of honour for me at the game pre-match. So I was down there thinking that the non-players were going to do like a little tunnel for the players to run back through after their warm-up to just rev the boys up, like big ceremonial thing. And I'm there I joined the end of the queue, and start clapping, waiting for all the team to come off after their warm-up. And the team manager's like, "That's for you, mate." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, and even the Newcastle players joined it and stuff to give me a little
wow.
So family, kids and missus all got to go out on the pitch and just take the applause and just enjoy the moment. So it was a real nice touch. They did it right, and I'll be forever grateful for that. Because to not be able to run out on the pitch with your boots and actually play the game, to be able to sort of leave in that way and sign off in that fashion was, it's quite emotional for everybody. Really, it was great.
I was going to say, because even though it might not have been ideally how much you'd have loved to be on the field, to playing a little local derby to sort of see it off. You've done quite a bit of preparation beforehand. When had you started thinking about, obviously the end is coming and getting yourself set up? A bit like Hask and his diggers, you've always been into sort of carving out wood, making tables, doing things with your hands. When did you think, well, that's something that I want to sort of get into? I'm going to start planning for the future.
Initially, it was just a hobby that got out of hand, to be honest. So, I moved house back in 2014 and had a bit more space, had a bit of a workshop and a garage area that was nice and pristine and whitewashed. I think the guy who lived there previously had a boat in it or something. If you saw it now, it's very different. It's just sawdust and stuck tools everywhere, offcuts of wood. But basically, I just I've always been a bit of a DIYer and a bit of a hobbyist and just accumulated more and more tools. Then Toolstation sponsored Saints, so I got a few freebies along the way, and now I've got more tools and chainsaws than most professional tree surgeons and furniture shops. But I've got mountains of tools. It got out of hand. Myself and Alex Waller got into it together and then started tag teaming and. now we've set up our own business together. And it just got to the point where it was like, well, we've got so much kit now, it would be stupid of us not to try and, formalise it a little bit and actually, get it to pay the bills. And that's the way it's kind of unfolded. So probably the last 3 years really have been building towards life after rugby and transitioning out the game and being comfortable enough that, you're not panicking the first month you retire, how am I going to put food on the table and pay the mortgage.
With your knife, I imagine.
So, that's what it is now. It's
up close personal robbery, if needs be.
Yeah, so for anyone that's not already following us on Instagram, it's at Wallabians Woodworks.
What's your biggest selling item? What do you normally do?
So our kind of USP is the live edge furniture, which for anyone that not familiar with that terminology, it's like a slab of wood from a tree trunk that's just been milled in its entirety. So it's not laminated multiple pieces together. You see like a kitchen worktop and it's got lots of little bits of wood laminated together to make one big worktop. This is just a single slab with the waney edge and the bark and everything on it, both sides. Sometimes you get them cast in resin. Sometimes you flip the live edge to the inside, so you've got square edges on the outside and you've got like a river down the middle where you pour the resin in or put some glass in there and stuff like that. That's kind of our main thing and our USP that, we do a bit different to what you can get at IKEA or whatever. But, I mean, IKEA is great, but this is a different level. So
you compare yourself to IKEA. The helms look side to 1997.
I'm just saying you can't go to B&Q or IKEA and buy this kind of stuff. It's a bit
bespoke.
Different. It's all handmade and bespoke and custom and that. But it's also sustainable because I'm a tree surgeon as well. So I qualified to do the climbing and the arborist work and the felling. And whenever I come across some nice timber, unfortunately every now and then you have to take down a nice hardwood tree. Rather than that just going to wood chip or firewood or being left to rot on the side of the road somewhere, it's, you mill it into these slabs, dry it and process it and then eventually recycle it as a nice table. So that's kind of...
People don't realise you were a tree surgeon while you were still playing. I mean,
it's like my day off.
Yeah, I want to tell a story about the time, the day off we were... I think it was either an England camp or it must have been Saints where you disappeared and then sent me that picture of you about 500 feet up where you'd been cutting some trees there's, you tell it.
I can't really remember the context, but
there's that power cable that was running right
of course, yeah. I was up a big cedar tree and the reason I was doing the tree was because it was overhanging the power lines and stuff. And I actually had an electrician out to confirm that they were insulated cables, they were all secure, they were insulated, there's no real danger there. You get up into the tree and basically just nip it back from either side of the cable so that it clears the cable. It's not rubbing and abrading and it's not going to cause a fire or like cut the power out to everyone's house in the village. But when I got up there, I removed part of the limb and I could see that it had been rubbing and it worn through the insulation. It was live bare cable and I was, a foot or so away from about
a lot of volts.
420 volts or whatever it is. So
400,000 volts would have
thought. Well, God no, I don't know. I imagine it was 3-phase.
Your beard would have gone up. All that beard oil and shoe polish in it would have
just disintegrated. Yeah.
Do you ever get yourself into any trouble doing that while playing? Like accidentally come in and saw your finger off and then have to say that you trapped in the door?
Yeah, I've had a few near misses. Luckily, so far, touch wood, they've all been pretty superficial. But I mean, because I'm in the workshop, I'm using like a chop saw and stuff. I've not actually cut myself on the blade, but I had a really bit of hard wood with a funny angle on it, real sharp angle. Then we'll essentially turn the wood into a knife blade because it's so sharp and such an acute angle on it. And when I put the saw blade into it, it flipped the wood and it grabbed the wood and pulled it against the fence and it ripped down my finger and took my fingerprint off and it was real close to the nail. So it just basically took my whole finger pad off right to the nail. It didn't touch any bone, luckily. But, considering you've had major injuries as a rugby player, I've had surgery on my spine and my shoulder and everything else, this is the most painful thing I've ever had because you've got so many nerve endings and bits and, all your dexterity and stuff in your fingertips. I remember just being sat there with my finger in the air like this, throbbing like tourniquet on it and ice and just thinking, this is like the most painful thing ever.
What does your missus say?
Well, I had to phone the physio because I'm always in there at stupid hours. So I have to phone the physio at 11 o'clock at night and go, it's happened again.
It's happened again. Do you reckon they've got
we're outside club hours, so don't tell anyone.
Don't be mad. Phone. Don't be mad. But
phone that rings. Oh fuck, the Woody phone's gone off. Hello, it's happened again. Oh fuck.
Yeah, I just have to ring and go don't be mad. But
can you get the plastic surgeon, please?
Don't be upset. Don't be worried. But it's happened again. I've chopped my arm off.
Yeah, and another one I had was I'd shot these big chunks of oak beam, basically, and the chop saw's not big enough to go through it. So you cut it on all four sides and you're left with like a nub in the middle that you then handsaw. Because the chop saw blade's thicker than the handsaw, you're left with this like protruding bit. So I'm palming these like bits of wood, and I've got the angle grinder in one hand and the wood in the other hand.
You're wincing. You're wincing.
Well, as soon as you start palming, you're like, yeah, got it, yeah.
Well, I've got the wood in one hand and I've got the angle grinder in the other. And what a sensible person or what like health and safety would suggest is that you clamp that piece of wood to the table and use two hands on the grinder. I ain't got time for that. I've got loads of these to do, and I'm not in an official
999 TV series starts.
I'm not in an official workshop. I'm in my own workshop in my garage. It's my job, my risk,
rules.
my body, whatever else.
Yeah.
So don't recommend this to anybody. But I'm palming them and I'm one handing the angle grinder, and I'm real guilty of like I'm halfway through and my grip's getting pretty tired. But I feel like
so you think you'd stop?
I feel like I'm bottling it at this stage. If I do anything other than finish the job. It's like fitness for me now, grip strength. So I keep going, and I've got. Luckily, I had the angle grinder with what's called a flap disc, like a sanding disc. If I had a cutting disc or a slitting disc, I think I'd be without my thumb now. Because a cutting disc is a real thin, like it's for cutting metal, and it would have literally had my finger off. This was a sanding disc, which was a much thicker, coarser thing. Still quite angry, but not devastating. Well, there's the scar. Sort of all down my thumb here, and luckily it went the length of my thumb rather than across it.
Maybe you'd have had a thinner thumb, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
For those of you who can't see, because you're not the visual aid,
it's the
you're listening, there's a full length.
I got a little
scar.
one. I got a little one.
I think it's on my Instagram, actually. I think I did actually
Right,
post it on my
excellent.
Instagram. You have to scroll back a little while. It was probably 4 or 5 years,
Some of them
4
real
years ago.
Keno fans
If you're a
who-
Keno, have
yeah.
a scroll and, like some stuff while you're
Repost,
there.
we'll share.
And then jump over to Woodworks and buy a chopping board or something. But yeah.
Comes with blood ingrained.
There could be a bit of finger in some of this work.
But yeah, that was the day of the end of season dinner at Saints, and I had to like basically phone up again and be like, "Oh, like I've done this." They're like, "You've got to get to A&E, go down A&E, get it all cleaned out and stitched and stuff, and turn up the dinner with black tie dinner with this thumb sort of hanging off." And yeah, luckily no long term effects or anything like that. Got away with it, but I've had a few of those near misses where it's been a bit touch and go.
I mean, you're only just into kind of retirement, but are you enjoying it? Are you seeking advice from people on what needs to happen? Do you feel like you're going to be like a duck to water, or are you a bit stressed?
I've been having quiet conversations with people for a while about like guys like yourself and Dylan and people that have fairly recently transitioned out the game. What red flags, what do I have to look out for, what are they going to be, you've talked about sort of running your diary and organising yourself, because you've been institutionalised for like 15 plus years where someone's told you where to be, what kit to wear, what you're eating, what, when you're going to bed, where you're going at the weekend, what travel arrangements are, and all of a sudden you've got none of that. I tried to get a full MOT before I left, get everything on the club's insurance, get my dentistry work done, get my shoulder put back together and all that, because out in the real world, no one's paying for those things. It's just a case of, I'm busy, I've got loads on, but it's structuring it and organising it, finding time to train, because you've been paid to train. You can take all morning at rugby club, you turn up, mid-morning, you can do as much weights and fitness and stretching and mobility as you like, ice baths and recovery. Outside of professional sport, if you want to do any of those things, you've got to find time for them and fit them around a working week like a normal person. It's a bit weird to start with. But I'm like I say, I'm only a month into it, but I'm doing okay so far. I've signed up for a few challenges, fitness-wise and stuff like that. Just to
like
keep.
what?
I'm doing a 100-mile bike ride with some ex-players in a month or so.
Talk
and just
to Tinds about that. He knows all about that.
Things like that, just to give you something to train towards and keep you connected to some old boys that have played the game. And
they're good. They're generally good. They're good crack.
It's networking. It's
There's a few going on. Stay away from Rob Wainwright. You end up doing some manic ones over 48 hours, but it does focus the mind.
It's things like that I feel like I still need to do a bit of, just to keep that competitive sort of streak at bay. But otherwise, I'm busy. I'm outside a lot with I want to do a little bit of this, a little bit of the commercial stuff. Just have as much variety as I can.
We might be pulling a couple of teams together later. Still don the boots for a little.
Oh really? Well, where?
It's not paid, but it could be for charity.
What's the fee?
What's the fee?
Well, at least he's got the most important things on there. What's the fee?
You obviously been listening to the conversation I had with you. Charge them first, charity later.
This could be about beers and just getting back with the lads.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be a water boy.
Tough negotiator over here.
Are you the kind of person that looks back on their career with like fondness and kind of pride, or have you not really thought about it? Where's your head at in terms of satisfaction for the incredible career you had?
I'm on the whole, I'm definitely proud of what I did and achieved. I've enjoyed it. I tried to squeeze every last sort of drop out of it. I don't feel like I've left anything on the table really. And I feel incredibly blessed to have gone through it all and come out the other end relatively in one piece and to have enjoyed it for as long as I have, because not many people are so lucky. There are a few moments that I would love to redo and or to not redo, because I gave it everything at the time, but I'd love a different outcome.
Like what would you do?
Oh, there's just a couple of moments, like big games where we fell flat on our face, and they were big moments in time that could have gone so differently. I mean, we all went to the World Cup in 2011, and we did 2015, and to have a home World Cup and to underachieve, and we trained hard and we prepared hard and we gave it everything, but just the outcome was a disaster, if we're honest. And to have any other outcome than that would be better. 2013, we lost to Wales in a Grand Slam, potential Grand Slam game away in Cardiff, where, we'd played really well. We'd beaten the All Blacks in 2012. Prior to that, we went into the Six Nations. We were unbeaten. Things were going great. And, we just choked. We actually played pretty well for 50, 60 minutes, but then the wheels came off and Wales, undid us in the last sort of 20 minutes.
That incredible try, didn't they? They
had a couple, like Warburton, Tipperick came to the fore, and like, I'm not bitter really, because I've had a good run, but I would have loved to have played for the British Lions, and I feel like they were defining moments, and I missed out on those things. So
because you didn't play well, you thought the Lions selector just overlooked you.
The likes of Gatland obviously was in Wales camp. He had his guys that he trusted, and he basically picked forward a Welsh back row on the back of that game, whereas we'd played well for the 12 months previously, but that game was fresh in the memory and justified those selections. And at the end of the day, he went away and did well and won. So there's no complaints from anybody. But, myself, Chris Robshaw, yourself at the time, Ben Morgan, people that were playing well for England at the time were cast aside. And like I say, I'm not bitter, and I don't.
Just make sure Warren Gatton doesn't come down at the high street when you're out.
No, it's just a case of like, if we could have possibly had a different outcome that game, things could have been very differently that summer. And there are moments that, can define a career or can rob you of opportunity. And if I could change a couple of those, then I would. But other than that, I mean, you're a competitor and you're man in the arena type thing. You give it all, and some go your way and some don't. And I've had some good days and some bad days, and we've had some go our way, and a few not. So
I was going to say, what is your sort of relationship with rugby now? Is it something that you want to take the kids? Still want to go down Franklin Gardens, watch, or are you now for a couple of years maybe put it at arm's reach and just try and see what the bigger way, because it's a difficult one to go down, is whether you stay fully in it, Norsville, go down, be around the club, or do you just
I've got no animosity towards the game. Like, I leave the game grateful and feeling pretty blessed to have done it. I also, we talked about sort of concussion at length earlier and whether rugby was in a crisis. I still think we're net in a very good place. The values and the positives in rugby are massively net positive. Like, there are some things to iron out, and there's some question marks over how we transition to that in the modern professional game. But generally speaking, rugby's net positive for me massively. And so my kids all play. I've got 2 girls, 7 and 10, and a lad 13, and I coach his teams at grassroots, like local club Bugbrook in Northampton.
Like as a coach?
I don't know.
Are you like
pretty intense, I suppose.
Jiu-jitsu warm-ups,
like
chokeholds.
When you said intense, like, you're late, run around the pitch, you missed the tackle.
I'm quite considered, and I hope I do an all right job.
There's nothing wrong with being late, run around the pitch.
No, I mean, there's definitely an element of like discipline and graft. I'm not there to mess about. I want it to be fun. I want them to enjoy themselves, obviously. But fun to me is competing and working hard and putting your best self on the pitch. Fun is not just dossing and, turning up late and not training hard and, just being lazy, or just the frivolous side of fun. Fun is about competing.
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference between fun and
satisfaction. Someone who doesn't really understand fun when they have to say the frivolous side of fun.
Someone doesn't have fun. And it's like, I like organisation. I like doing maths. It's like, well, that's not fun. Being normal and well-behaved is really, really fun. Okay.
No, but
have you made any of them cry?
No, not yet.
Will you pause then? Was it a little bit of a cry?
One up on you.
Yeah. I yellow carded a little kid.
Well, no, the way young lads enjoy like competitive, the combative, the hard work. Fun is probably the wrong word. It's like satisfaction and self-worth and intensity that you bring to it. That doesn't mean you can never smile. That doesn't mean like you can never have a laugh with it. Like we went on tour last year and it was a great crack and the boys enjoy it. They enjoy each other's company. They like being there. They're there early. They do their training beforehand. They hang around afterwards. They'll meet up whenever they can because they're good mates. They're best mates. But the actual training is fairly intense and hard. And some people would probably say, is that too much for an under-13s team? But I think it's exactly what they thrive on and what they love. And it's what I would have wanted as an under-13-year-old.
Well, none of the parents are going to tell you any different, are they? Because you get strangled.
They tend to...
Have you met my mate? Knife? It's like Mick Dundee.
That's not a knife. This is a knife. It's got my
the
name
feedback's all
outside
been
of it.
pretty positive.
Really?
Because they love it. Yeah,
They were
the
shaking like
kids love
shitty
it.
dogs when they give you the feedback. Little Timmy loves it. I don't want to go. What did you say, Timmy? I love it. I love it. Fun, frivolous fun.
I think
Fuck
the kids
that.
love it, but the proof will be in the pudding at the end of the day. If I get turfed out of there at some point, or full revolt and
why have we had to close the
revolution
class?
at Bugbrook Rugby Club, and I just get turfed out.
Because that approach of sort of dedication, intensity is not very 2022. It's all about like just taking parts, and being shit and average is absolutely fine.
I'm not about participation medals and stuff like that.
Agreed.
No, you're there to win.
Oh, good.
First or last. Shake and bake.
Shake and bake, baby.
No, but you said like about am I going to turn my back on rugby or like put it at arm's length for a bit? No, in terms of the grassroots and the coaching, I'm going to encourage my kids. Not that I expect any of them to play. If they want to do something else, whether it's the girls do gymnastics and loads of other things, or whatever they want to do, I just want them to commit to and do to the best of their ability and get the most out of it. But also with the Saints, I intend to stay connected to them as much as possible. I don't want to be a day-to-day sort of coach or admin role or anything like that. But if I can go down on game days and do some of the hospitality or sponsorship stuff or any mentoring roles or things that I can just stay like loosely connected to the club and give anything back. And the club have all been really positive about the prospect of that and what that might look like with no meat on the bones yet. But hopefully I'll still be around there in some way. I'm still a fan at heart. I've had a great journey with the Saints. I consider it home now. So anything I can do to be positive involvement there and influence on any of the players and the community. I'm still an ambassador for the Saints Foundation, which is their charity arm as well. I do great work in the community. So I live down the road, like 10 or 15 minutes away. So there's no harm, is there? Can
you sum up what Saints means to you in a short sentence?
Well, probably not in a short one.
We can go longer. We're not going to
count the words.
Yeah.
It's home now, and I was made to feel very welcome from the moment I turned up. It was a tough decision leaving Worcester. I was a loyal person that wanted to stay and do things right and go on to win things with Worcester. But I came to the realisation that as much as I wanted that to happen, it wasn't going to happen on my time frame. So I had to make a tough call. And when Saints showed interest, it was it was a tough decision that I had to make in the end. And once I made it and backed it 100%, I got to Saints and I was made to feel very welcome from the get-go. The standard of rugby and the intensity of training, everything was a step up, which is something I thrived on and enjoyed. But then the broader community, like I say, I mentioned the Saints Foundation. I mentioned like all the networking and the people that you come across in the broader town. It's a great place to play rugby. It's a proper rugby town. I still think it's one of the best stadium. I know I'm biased, but it's best stadium and pitch to play at. The pitch is always immaculate. The atmosphere is great. And I think we've played an enjoyable brand of rugby with great people throughout the time I've been there. I feel pretty lucky, and like I say, I don't leave the team, the club, the community, or anything like that under a cloud of smoke with any animosity or bad feeling. I leave incredibly grateful for the time I had, and proud of the time I pulled the shirt on.
Does it make it easier though that you obviously got Douse there and Sam, who you've obviously tangled with and played alongside for?
Yeah. In some ways, I mean, in other ways, it was probably tougher because you knew those guys to have those tough conversations at the end where you're trying to make decisions and you're not quite sure where you stand. And Douse has had to he's come into that role at the end of this season. He's had to tell some mates that he's played with and against or coached for a number of years that, mate, there's no job for you next year, or there isn't as much money as you'd like, or whatever it is. Taymana Harrison's had Piers Francis, Api Watunyuara, Ace Tuala, guys that Douse has been working with for a long time. He's had to have really tough conversations, and myself included. And luckily for myself and Dal, so I'm pretty philosophical about it, and I'd made my peace, and there was no sort of bad blood or animosity. If it, had it been different, had I been incredibly ambitious to go another year and intent on doing a bit more, it might have been a different conversation. And if we were arguing over circumstances and money, it might have been a different flavour to that. But no, it was all done, in a amicable sort of peaceful way, and I'm happy that I always wanted to get out on my own terms, and while the going was good, and I feel like I've done that to the best of my ability.
As a competitive man who obviously strives for kind of success in everything, like you said, you're a serious operator. In your retirement, is there anything you'd like to really tick off? Like, what is next for the Tom Wood Express?
No, there's nothing. I'm fairly sort of, what would you say? I've got very little ambition to go into sort of anything specific or have any sort of high life or do anything. I'm looking forward to having a bit more sort of control over my schedule. As a rugby player, there's loads of perks. I don't want to sound like I'm moaning for a second, but some of the downsides of being a full-time professional rugby player, you can't go skiing, you don't get much of a Christmas, you can't plan summer holidays, and I've got three young kids.
Weekends.
I've got 3 young kids. I've got no weekend, no summer holiday, no Christmas, no skiing opportunities. So I'm looking forward to being able to like put a date in the diary and go and do something and not have to be like, I tell you what, mate, if you want to do something, ask me the day before, because if someone gets injured or it doesn't matter how much notice someone gives you in professional rugby, I can't commit to anything, because if I get injured, someone gets injured, selection goes my way or goes someone else's way, I get picked on a summer tour or not. For example, at the end of a season, you could be in semi-finals and finals, you could be finished early, you could be selected for England, you might not be selected for England, you might be playing for the Barbarians, you might not be, you might be injured and having an operation and off your feet for ages. And you don't know that until the final whistle of the last game, and things change right up to the last minute. So I'm looking forward to being able to just say to somebody, yeah, we're going fishing in so many weeks' time, or we're going to go skiing with the kids in February this year, or we're going to go on a summer holiday and I'm booking a week or 2, and we can just do it on our own timings and not have to worry about whether a coach is going to call me back in. I mean, Paul Hill was away on holiday a year or so ago, and he gets a call from Eddie to be in the training camp, and he has to just ditch his holiday, ditch his missus and kids, get to camp, to hold a bag, to not play. But you're just crazy not to take the opportunity and to not do everything you can to be, and things like that happen all the time. That's just one example that was fresh in my mind. But, when you're living like that, you have to be selfish. You have to put, your rugby and your crib in front of missus and kids and everything else. And I'm looking forward to just reversing that a little bit and doing things in my own time frame. And I'll still keep active and I'll still keep busy, and I'll do a couple of these random challenges from time to time for charity and other things. But I'm not thinking that I have to go and be super successful in any other walk of life, really. I'll do my woodwork and my tree surgery, and as long as I've got a comfortable existence, I'll be happy.
And try not to saw your hands off and you'll be absolutely
Yeah, there's a real danger of that, I suppose. But
that might put an end to tree surgery.
Well, listen, Woody, I think it's fair to say you've had an unbelievable career. You've always been a fantastic teammate. We love everything about you, your seriousness, your determination, your honesty, and your desire for fun. So we wish you the best of luck. We have a couple of episodes left in this series of GBR. We have an NFL special, would you believe, with F.A. Obada and Jamie Gillan, the Scottish Hammer. What a powerful name. What an episode that was.
You would have lived. Oh. You would have loved to have James Haskell, the English Hammer.
Oh, imagine that. I would dine out. I'd just be known as the Hammer instead of what I'm actually known as. We can't use that word on this podcast. We also caught up with James Waterhouse, the BBC Kiev correspondent who used to play in the Championship. Both are fascinating episodes, especially, the NFL was amazing, but James Waterhouse one was emotional, was scary, was terrifying.
Yeah, I don't think he really put fears to rest about what's going to happen come the future. But the story of going from playing, Esher, Rotherham, to then being on the front line reporting on, what's been happening over the last 3 months or whatever, probably longer than that, since February. Very, very unbelievably interesting and emotionally driven.
He said it was the stuff he's seen over there. But listen, I won't spoil any more of it. Please make sure that you subscribe, you follow, you give us a like. Follow Tom Wood where?
Wood by name is my personal Instagram, but then myself and Alex Waller's business account is @Waller and Woodworks, and we got a website there as well with some fresh stock on it if you want to go and have a look.
And he's already promised to make sure we might have a new studio soon, that we're going to have a little GBNR.
Yeah, a little bit of live edge furniture, live edge.
Can't live without
or something
live
on the wall. Yeah.
Well, I've been James Haskell, been Mike Tindall, it's been Tom Wood. Sadly, we haven't had Alex Payne, but we haven't really needed him. You've been listening to the Good the bad, and the rugby.